how's it going? Welcome to today's installment of Mike's Vehicle Vlogs, and I want to thank you so much for joining me today, because today I'm sure I'm doing something that maybe a lot of viewers have probably were hoping that I was going to do, or eventually I'm sure somebody was going to ask me. So over the last few vlogs that I've made, I've done a video where I ranked all of the cars that I used to have. I did a video where I ranked most of the cars that my family has ever had. Today, we're going to rank all four of the cars that I currently have. So, the 2015 Ford Fusion S, the 2006 Saab 932 2.0T, the 2015 Ford Fiesta SE, and the 2003 Pontiac Grand Am GT. Now, to be quite honest, this, for the most part, has been a very difficult thing to do, because I love all these cars. Each one of them has a different characteristic from the next, but I'm doing it for you guys. From my least favorite to my most favorite. Let's begin.
The only real reason for me to rank the 2015 Ford Fiesta SE as my least favorite car out of the bunch is mainly because it's a little too small for my vehicle preferences, and it is also primarily my wife's car. That doesn't mean that I have bad things to say about this car. I absolutely love driving this little thing. Not to mention, after owning it for just over 5 years at this point, it has so far proven to be a perfect car mechanically. Sure, it's had several blend door actuators replaced, and it is on its second dual clutch pack, but that really doesn't stop me from saying that this thing has been pretty reliable so far, and it's also a super fun car to drive due to its compact size and its quick to respond handling. Not to mention, this particular Fiesta looks amazing in the blue candy metallic color with the optional SE Sport appearance wheels. Putting it in last place absolutely kills me, but we do need to start this ranking list off somewhere.
So out of the four cars that I have in my possession, the 2015 Ford Fiesta SE is in last. But honestly, I put it there, I think, just for the size. It has been an amazing car. We just celebrated 5 years. You know, we're getting ready to celebrate 5-year ownership with it. It's definitely the longest lasting car in the entire fleet of cars that I have. This car has pretty much been on this channel, on this vlog series, since the vlog series started. The vlog series was like a month old when we bought this car. So it is the longest lasting car in the vlog series. And yeah, we have not had any real issues with it. But I think I have it honestly as, you know, my least favorite out of the four. And trust me, it's really hard making these decisions with all the rankings of these cars. But honestly, I think it's because of the size. I love driving this car. It's small, which again is kind of a downfall with, you know, me and comfort and stuff. Even though I'm comfortable driving it, I honestly prefer more legroom. I can't get as much legroom out of this car as I could the other three. But then you also have the things like the fact that because it's so small, it honestly makes it more fun to drive. This car gets up and goes. You know, it's got a little 1.6 liter Sigma 4-cylinder is what they call it. And it delivers pretty quickly because of the size and the fact that this car is paired with the 6-speed dual clutch transmission, which is basically a manual transmission, manual gearbox controlled by a computer. So it shifts like a manual transmission, but you don't have to worry about shifting it yourself. Unless you wanted to, of course. It's got sport mode, and you can actually shift the gears yourself. But the dual clutch transmission pack in the transmission allows for the gears to shift quicker than even a manual transmission could do. Thus, it gives you more response as far as accelerating when you need that gear change right away, and it actually saves you just the tiniest bit on fuel because you're not losing, you're not wasting horsepower in between the shifts like you would in automatic or even a manual transmission. With the dual clutch, the second clutch is always on standby for that next gear change, so you're not losing power in between the gears. That was the whole point of it. So you pair that with the small size of the car and the 120 some horsepower 4-cylinder, and honestly, it'll take off pretty decently. Maintenance wise, this car has not been that bad over our 5 years. I've done front brakes to it. We just put a brand new, four brand new tires on it within the last month. So the tires, brand new, they're quiet, they respond nice, they're comfortable, they're Continentals. This particular SE is definitely more upscale than a typical SE. Whoever ordered this car from factory, they spec'd it out really well. They put the sport appearance package on it, which includes the 16-inch sport-looking black wheels. It's also got the My Ford Touch infotainment system, which does include a touchscreen. Even though I like buttons on a car inside, this one does have a nice share of buttons on the console and down below and stuff. So it's not all boring with just a touchscreen there that does stuff. It still has character, in my opinion, with all the buttons that are here in the center stack. So it's a nice balance. I like the system. I'm glad that it's here in this car. I just like the way that it makes the car look on the inside for some reason. We bought this car with about 21,000 miles on it when it was 2 years old. And we are now at 45,143 miles. So within the 5 years that we've had it, it literally only gets driven pretty much to my wife's place of employment and back. Every now and then we take it to do errands, or she'll take it to do errands and stuff. But honestly, it is the least driven car out of all 4 cars that sit in my driveway. This car responds well. I mean, it does not take much to actually, get this car to steer when you are, turning the wheel. It's very responsive. It is honestly a great car to drive. And even though I don't drive it all the time, this is primarily my wife's car. When I do drive this car, I have fun driving it. It's just a fun car, and I kind of hate to put it in my last ranking, but I think, because of the fact that I don't drive it enough, and it doesn't really offer me all the space that I can really feel comfortable in day after day after day of driving. I think that's really the only reason why I decided to put it last. But this has been a wonderful car in our 5-year ownership. I just recently did the 5-year review, and I really can't say anything bad about it. So it does hurt to put it in last place, but just for the reasons of it not being one that I drive all the time, and that it is smaller than what I can be comfortable in, that is really the only reason. Other than that, fantastic car. I love this car. I'm so glad we bought this car. It's been great.
This 2006 Saab 9.3 2.0T is the most recent addition to my vehicle fleet. I've only had this car for about a month and a half, and I've only driven it a little over 600 miles. I am, however, falling more in love with it the more that I'm behind the wheel. The 2006 model year was produced during the 9.3's second generation run and was produced before the final 2008 facelift. I've personally always preferred the looks of this pre-facelifted 9.3 and honestly never thought I'd own one, but thanks to my amazing stepsister Megan, that opportunity had been given to me. At close to 200,000 miles, it really doesn't have too much that needs to be sorted out. Other than some cosmetic rusting here and there on the outside, this 9.3 as a whole has been kept up pretty decently over its life, and is honestly a joy to drive as is. I hope to keep this now defunct Saab vehicle on the road for as long as I possibly can.
A lot of you guys may be wondering why did I put the Saab, in the bottom of my three main cars that I typically drive. Well, just because I put it in third doesn't necessarily mean I hate the car or anything. I actually really, really love this car. Definitely, has been taking some time to get used to, everything about this car, features, the way it drives right now. Just, it's taken me a little while. It is a really, really cool and unique car, and I am still very grateful to my stepsister for just giving it to me, and giving me the opportunity to have an actual Saab experience. The lighting is awful. I am so sorry. This is technically the first European car that I've ever owned, even though it is technically still a GM product from this time period. But even though it is a GM product, Saab still had a lot of unique features, unique design. I mean, you look at this car, this particular 9.3, the generation of this 9.3, and you don't see anything looks, features, design. You don't see GM when you look at this. You for sure see a Saab. Now, at the time that this is being filmed, I have only had this car for maybe about a month and a half at this point. But I will say, within the month and a half, I have driven it a lot. Because I still want to get to really learn the car, see how far I can maybe push the car, because it's old. She's got 195,000 miles on it, and that's a lot. That is definitely a lot of miles. This thing has been around. I will say that I do have the Carfax report on this car, and I'll probably tackle that in another vlog in time, but I will kind of give you guys a little more history on the car from what we were able to get from Carfax, like I said, in a later video. But like I said, just because I put it down in third doesn't mean I hate this car out of the three cars that I drive all the time. I love all three of the cars, and to be quite honest, making this video and actually trying to put a rank on all of the cars that I do have in my driveway is kind of a challenge, because each car to me is, has a little more uniqueness than the next one. This is honestly as weird as it is to say, because of how old it is and the mileage and stuff, it is probably the nicest car interior-wise that I've ever had. I've never had a car that had leather seats that were heated, the wood grain, it's got a 7-speaker sound system, which sounds really, really good. It is also the most expensive car that I've ever had when it was brand new. This particular car totaled out at a little over $30,000, according to the window sticker, in 2006. I honestly don't know how much it would be worth today, and I don't know how much my stepsister paid for it when she bought it a few years ago, but nonetheless, in 2006, it was $30,000. This one also has the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that puts out 210 horsepower, thus also making this the most powerful car that I have ever had, which is really weird to say. Just behind the 2008 Grand Prix that I had, which only put out 200 horsepower from a Series 3 V6 engine. So by 2006 standards, by this car putting out 210 horses for just a 4-cylinder, the turbocharger obviously does a lot of the work. Getting this thing to move, it does not take off all that quick, to be quite honest with you. But I will say this, once this car is out of first gear and into second gear, and then you start easing into the accelerator, that is really when I notice the pickup. But in first gear, when you're at a standstill and you want to go, and you feather the pedal down some, it's not until you get second, then you can kind of get into it. That's when the turbo lag starts to go away. And when you're on the highway with this car and you want to go into pass somebody or such, it does not take much for this car to accelerate once it is already on the highway. The RPMs don't have to be up. You see the turbo gauge start to go all the way closer to the red zone, and this thing will start to take off pretty decently. I cannot complain about that. I do wonder what it would be like to actually floor this car from a standstill and see how fast, you know, it gets to a certain speed, or just the overall acceleration performance of this thing. But it is old, as I've said. It needs work. I really don't want anything bad to happen to this engine. I still think it might need a tune-up. It might need some new plugs, I'm assuming. It does run a little shaky the first start of the day. So my guess is maybe we'll start with spark plugs, but it doesn't take that long for this thing to actually start running really well. Now, we do need new struts. I mentioned that before. We do have to look into a little bit of the play that's here in the steering wheel, which everything suspension wise is tight. I'm honestly suspecting the rack itself might be a little worn, maybe the pinion gear in the rack. Now, it does respond quite nicely, but just when the wheel's in the center, there's a little bit of this play here with no movement of the car, and sometimes it makes me a little nervous. But for the most part, it steers, and I'm pretty sure that that is all that matters. I did do something to the infotainment system when I went to go swap the CD drive. So the one issue that I have that I need to dig into is the actual audio module does not come on right away when the car is started like it used to. It does not wake up. The infotainment information module, which is this whole cluster here on the dash, it wakes up and it is responsible for waking up the audio module, but the audio module is not getting a signal right away. Eventually the radio comes on, and when the radio is on, it actually works normally. But I have a feeling I messed up something when I was tinkering around inside the CD player to get the one CD that was stuck in it out. So I think I did it. Ah yes, my battery on the camera died prematurely. Great. So as I was saying, yes, that's an issue that I have to dig into and try to correct, because I do believe I am the one who put the problem there. So we'll save that for another time. But overall, I do really like driving this car. It is a fun car to drive. I love the way that the car looks. This particular 9.3 is probably my favorite out of all of the models that have been out there, like the generation wise. I love the color of this car, and I love all of the modifications that my stepsister had actually done to the car. The black striping down the whole top end of the car, and the blacked out letters, as well as the blacked out trunk belt. The plasti dip on the wheels. I love the fact that the wheels are blacked out too. So it's just a really good looking car, and that is definitely one of my favorite, characteristics of the car. Being behind the wheel in the cockpit of the car is also a really, fun experience. The design, the fact that there's so many buttons, because I like buttons. Buttons, in my opinion, give the interior character. I don't like seeing a large touchscreen in the middle of the dashboard and stuff, or all digital gauges and stuff. That's just, it's kind of boring to me. I'd rather see analog gauges and buttons along the dashboard like this car has. It definitely definitely gives it a lot more character, in my opinion. So it's a fun car to drive. It's a lot more comfortable than, the Grand Am as far as the project car goes. And it's just an enjoyable car. I can really see why my stepsister loved this car so much and why it was hard for her to just let this car go to anybody else. It's a really cool car. But unfortunately, it may not be my favorite as far as all the 4 cars go, but I cannot complain about really anything with this car that is beyond my fault, to be honest with you. It's a great car. I really do like having this car.
It only took me 20 years to get my hands on a car that I've long sought after since I was an early teenager, a 5th generation Pontiac Grand Am GT. This was the car that created such a deep love for the Pontiac brand in me. This was the car that got me much more interested in cars in general. And this was also the car that I took my driver's test in, and passed. It's been a little over a year and a half now with the ownership of my 2003 Pontiac Grand Am GT, and it really has so far been an amazing car for what it is and for what it's been through before I got it. She has battle wounds and scars all throughout the exterior, but she is a perfectly fine driving machine at the moment and has been almost completely perfect since I rebuilt the top half of the engine and brought it back to life. There wasn't much else that needed to be done to it when I bought it almost 10,000 miles ago, but I do know more repairs will be in the near future. When I was looking to buy the Grand Am, it absolutely had to be a GT model specifically for the GT 5-spoke wheels, the ribbed body cladding, the trunk lid spoiler, and the GT-only 3400 Ram Air V6.
I kind of feel like a lot of people watching this video right now are really confused about why I didn't put the Saab ahead of this car in particular. Granted that the Saab has so many other cool features, also has a lot more luxury. The car itself in general is honestly drives more comfortable than this. But I think the whole reason why I picked this over the Saab in my ranking is honestly because I have always been in love with this car even before I had this one, so it honestly is probably more of a nostalgia thing, to be honest with you. Aside from all of the other things that I absolutely love about this car, it's more so like this car, this model has always been a part of me ever since I was a younger kid. And I've said that in just about every single video that I've ever made on this car. Not even this Grand Am in particular, any video that I've ever done on a Grand Am, I've always mentioned the fact that this car has always been a very special part of my childhood. It's honestly the car that has gotten me pretty much into cars. And again, it was always ahead of its time. One of the main reasons why I've always loved Pontiacs is specifically because the way that they looked. And even with this 5th generation Grand Am, there has never been a Pontiac that looked like this before, and there has not been one that looked like this after. When Pontiac axed out the Grand Am in 2005 and they replaced it with the G6 really didn't have a whole lot of characteristics that carried over from this Grand Am. So there again, it's like when the Grand Am was done, this is what it was done as. Nothing else took its place the way that this Grand Am looks, or drives for that matter. I still get excited driving this car. I still love being in front of all the orange glow I love having this two-piece bezel in front of me. I love how thick this steering wheel is. I love how the seats feel. This car is just amazing. Now, we all know this example is obviously not the best example. I have a door, a fender that's creased from the door over here, so the door doesn't open all the way. I got some cladding over there that's sticking out a little bit. The inside is actually near flawless, other than the fact that the carpets and the seats can use a really good soap scrubbing. But other than that, this car is really good, in really good a shape for the age, and the mileage on it ain't bad either. The one thing that I still don't care about with this particular car, this particular one here, is the color. I've grown to accept the color, and I will say that the color does look really good when the car is perfectly washed, has a nice little bit of wax coating over it, and when the sun is on it. You can actually see the metallic in the green color. But other than that, the polo green, not my first choice. I settled for it only because of the fact that the car was cheap, and for the most part, this thing didn't need a whole lot of work to bring it back to life. So the fact that this is still a $750 car, had it for over a year, and have only put in just a little more than what I paid for the car over the course of my ownership so far, I have nothing to really complain about. It's not like I spent $3,000 on it and then had to dump another $3,000 or something into it to get it running. I didn't really have to. So for the price that I paid for this car and the amount that I've spent on it so far to bring it back to life and keep it running, really hasn't been that bad for me to complain about. I don't think this was a bad deal at all. I've mentioned it before that things are coming. I am pretty sure this year we're doing transmission lines, and while we're at it, we're doing a transmission pan gasket and possibly the filter also. We may as well. Even though I'm really scared to mess with the transmission, being that it is shifting perfectly fine. And I really hope that we're not going to jinx the performance of the transmission by changing the fluid and stuff in it. But the lines, I feel like you can just easily pinch the lines and they're going to crumble. The transmission pan started leaking recently, and it's starting to every now and then leave a little tiny drip or so on the pavement when the car is sitting. So my concern is I don't have a dipstick. These transmissions on this car do not have dipsticks, so you can't check to see how much fluid is actually in the transmission. That's one of my concerns with it. Even then, you know, if I wanted to add fluid, it's still going to be a pain, and I'm not going to know how much to add. So the lines, the gasket, and with the filter, since it's going to be there, we may as well change all of it when the time comes. Plus some new transmission fluid. Probably going to have to add wiper blades in the near future also, even though they kind of clear up after they're used for a while, but they still streak a little bit. Crack in the windshield has gotten wider, but I honestly don't plan on doing anything with the windshield until it becomes a problem. The eBay radio that we bought, the volume knob occasionally acts up, and it has been getting a little worse. It did it a little bit when I bought it, but it is starting to, you know, act up pretty good. If I want to turn the volume up on this amazingly sounding Monsoon sound system, the volume will go down, and I have to continuously turn the knob in the up direction before it finally starts to go up. That is a common thing with these stereos. I honestly do not think at this point in time I'm going to escape that issue. Am I going to change the stereo? Nope. But I will say it does make me want to sort of look into exchanging this steering wheel for a GT2 or GT1. I forget which one had it for this year, but either way, the one car that I don't have audio volume buttons on the spokes, we might look into maybe exchanging a steering wheel with audio controls. And I think the clock spring has to be changed also for the wiring harness in the column. The car has a V6 engine, a 3400 Ram Air V6 to be exact, puts out 175 horsepower. And I will say that it is the only car out of the four that has a V6. Obviously, no turbo, no nothing, just the two Ram Air scoops in the front that bump the horsepower up 5 horses from the stock standard V6 that you would find on the SE models of this Grand Am. Of all the cars, it does take off the fastest, it being a V6, of course. So yeah, that is one of the main reasons why this car is, up there as my favorites. It is definitely the sportiest feeling of all the cars that I have, and it is definitely the one that gets up and goes the fastest. I also really love the way the V6 sounds. I think that pretty much sums up the reasoning of why I picked this car to be the second favorite out of all 4 cars that I have.
By now, you have come to realize that the 2015 Ford Fusion S is my most favorite car out of my 4-car fleet. To simply say it, this car is 100% perfect to me in every single way. It has been a very reliable car for the last 3.5 years of ownership. It is the most spacious and the most comfortable to be in out of all 4 cars. And out of all the cars that Ford pulled out of production over the last few years, the Fusion is the one car that should have stayed in. Over the many years of doing car tours and reviews for my video series, the second generation Ford Fusion was a car that has kept me highly interested year after year. I always thought to myself that I would not mind having one of these. They drive so comfortably, they handle so smoothly, and they look so aggressive. In 2018, this ingot silver metallic Fusion S, without a hole in the bumper at the time, showed up to the dealership that I worked at, and I finally decided to buy it. I have yet to say that buying this Fusion was a mistake.
I honestly think a lot of you guys probably saw that this was coming. The Fusion, out of all 4, is hands down my favorite. Even though I don't drive it as much as I did, because now I have 2 other cars that I juggle around, this car is still hands down my favorite car out of the bunch that I have. All of my cars are awesome. All of my cars are great. All of them, as I've mentioned, have their own different characteristics. But the Fusion, honestly, is the one that tops the cake with all of them. Always wanted to get one of these when they first came out. And this particular generation, which sadly was the final generation for the Fusion, just the way that these things looked, the way that they're just designed on the inside, I love how these things drive. When I was still doing my original video series and I featured many of these Fusions over time on my channel, it honestly just kind of always planted the seed in the back of my mind that I really wanted to have one. And I decided to pull the trigger on that idea 3.5 years ago when I bought this one. This was not originally the one that I was going for. I wanted to get an SE model, but unfortunately it just didn't work out. But then I found this. A base, plain Jane Fusion S. The bottom trim, there is not one piece of optional equipment on this car. Nothing. No options whatsoever. Everything on this car is bare bones minimum standard equipment for the Fusion. And it's perfect. It is absolutely perfect. You would think that it being a base model, it would be missing stuff, stuff that you feel like you absolutely have to have. And this car, honestly, for me, doesn't have anything like, no situation like that. Everything that this car is equipped with is like perfect. I still have power everything. Power windows, power door locks, power mirrors. I've got hands-free sync, phone capability, MP3 auxiliary capability, automatic headlights, cruise control. I mean, this Fusion has everything that I could ever ask for, and it has nothing that I absolutely don't need, It is a very comfortable driving car, and out of all four of the cars, it is the most comfortable. It's the most quiet. It is the one that has the most space. It's the one that I am most comfortable in. I mean, this Fusion is just, I'm in love with this car. And maintenance-wise and such, I haven't had to do anything with it so far. In the 3.5 years that I've had it, I haven't had to do anything major to it other than oil changes. Just put 4 brand new tires on it within the last year. This Fusion is also powered by the 2.5 liter Duratec 4-cylinder, no turbocharger, all naturally aspirated. It's pretty much the same exact engine that I had in my 2011 Escape, which was my previous vehicle before I decided to get this. And these engines are pretty much bulletproof. There aren't really too many issues that take place with this particular engine. It does have a slight timing cover leak, and that is something that is common when you get to the mileage range that this particular engine is at. But it's nothing too serious at the moment. Something for me to keep an eye on, and I'm sure eventually, in the years to come, I'll eventually have to replace the timing cover gasket or reseal it. It's not a gasket, it's more of a like RTV sealant type thing. And again, that's just something that occurs with a lot of these 2.5 liters as they age. So it's really nothing too serious at the moment. I'm just so happy with this car, and like I said, it's tough for me to actually throw a ranking on all of the cars because I love all of the cars that I have. Obviously, if I didn't like them in one way or another, I probably wouldn't have them. I wouldn't be driving them. So, week after week, I try to at least get, each car out on the road for a day or a few days at a time. I don't like for them to sit, but at the same time, having the other 2 project cars, the Grand Am and the Saab, have also helped me, have been helping me keep the mileage from getting too crazy on, this particular car. If any of the cars that I drive all the time, if I want to keep the mileage on them low, I mean, this is the one that I want to try to keep as low as possible. I've driven this car, 33,000 miles, I think. Somewhere around 33,000 miles since I purchased it. And that is within the 3.5 year span. So obviously when I originally bought it, it was the main car. When I had the Aztec and I finally had the Aztec running, then I was able to kind of go back and forth. When I was going to school, this was the car that would be driven out of state into Pennsylvania to go to school. So the mileage really kind of shot up a little bit when I started going to school. But then after school was over, I've been out of school for about a year now, and now all I gotta do is work. My job is a little bit of a highway commute, not all that long, but having the Grand Am and the Saab, as mentioned, has really helped keep this car from getting too crazy with the mileage. But as hard as it has been to throw a rank on all of the cars that I have, because each one of them is more unique than the other, and I love them all, and I love driving all of them, picking the Fusion as my favorite honestly was not that hard to do. This car is amazing, and when the time comes where it's paid off, and as much as I miss having an SUV, I don't know if I can get rid of this car. If this car holds up as well as it has been so far, and as long as, you know, nothing major happens to it, this is the one car that I think in all of the cars that I've ever owned and actually, you know, financed as a nice, reliable, daily driving car, this is the one that so far I have not been like, I'm sick of it, I gotta get rid of it, I'm ready for something else. I haven't really had that with this car. So, yeah, I think the Fusion is gonna be the one to stay for quite a while. It's great, and it is my favorite car out of all the ones that I have. Alright everyone, so that's going to wrap up this vlog. I hope that you guys found this interesting. Hope that you guys kind of understand where I came from as far as ranking all these cars, where they are. And that's just it. I got nothing else for you guys today. So, if you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and check out teespring.com/store/Mike'sVehicle for all of your MVS and vlog merchandise. That's all that I've got for today. So I will see you guys next time. And I want to thank you so much for watching, and take care. Well, it is about lunchtime. And I don't know where I want to eat. I have no idea where I'm going. No idea. But I do know that I have to find a place to park and take my camera stuff down. Because I don't want people to think that I'm weird. The last park that I was at, there were a lot more people out there than I was originally anticipating. So I think a lot of people were looking at me when I was filming my car. And sometimes it's weird when you're filming in public places like that. Like for this video in particular, I wanted to find more places to film, you know, because with 4 different cars, I didn't want to necessarily use the same spot for all 4 of them, and I definitely didn't want to do anything in the driveway. So it was kind of weird bringing the camera out to other places to film in public. So it just makes me feel weird, you know. But at the same time, I'd like to be able to get more shots like that outside of the parks and in the, you know, out the parks and out of the driveway and stuff. And I got the opportunity to drive all 4 cars within a 24-hour time period. Alright, I'm hungry. Bye.